let's talk about a basic defensive strategy if you're in the ground category, working in that range, and you're with an opponent who is superior at grappling compared to you are, or compared to how you are. So the basic strategy that I'd recommend, and this is not the end-all be-all of strategies, but it's one that you should contemplate. If you're in the ground game and you're starting to get beat, for the lack of a better term, what you want to be able to do is rotate into one of two positions. Now, what do you think those might be? I'll let you think about it for a second. You're the weaker opponent. Now, that doesn't mean you're weaker physically, but you're the weaker opponent in the overall game of ground chess at this point. So two positions I would recommend that should be part of your immediate defensive strategy if you start to be beat. That is the guard and the turtle. Now remember, the turtle is a dangerous position, well, as is the guard for anybody who's talented, but the turtle is a tad bit more dangerous than the guard because you don't have the control that you have from your legs and that kind of thing, being able to hold onto your opponent and maximize your strength while they struggle around and try to break your guard. The turtle position is transitory in nature. That means you don't stay there, right? Once you get into the turtle, you're looking to use that as an opportunity to move into another position. And in terms of your basic strategy overall, whether it's defensive or offensive, you're always looking for positional dominance, right? So in the ground game, in the ground category, or in what we call a ground range of our 5 ranges, what are the 5 ranges? You'll see me say this throughout videos all throughout here, okay? Kicking, trapping, striking, grappling, ground, and those are proximities. So kicking being the furthest away, the ground being right on top of each other. And so the ground category, the ground range, your overall defensive strategy, your overall offensive strategy really needs to be about positional dominance. You do not want to be dominated in your position, but you do want to dominate the other person in your position. And since this is self-defense oriented and not focused on competition, you also want to be mindful of how the position can affect you if you're surrounded by more than one person who you happen to be engaged in that fight with, right? So number one strategy, of course, in any of this is don't go to the ground. Now, granted, that's pretty obvious, and you'll hear me say that in other videos too. But once you end up on the ground, it's about positional dominance, transitioning to a better position. Think about the hierarchy. Go look at those hierarchy of ranges. You know, the quick overview is the best possible one is going to be mount, all the way down to back mount being the worst, in our opinion. So again, your overall defensive strategy, the two things that you should be thinking about immediately and being able to protect yourself is getting into the guard, which helps equalize the fight. Give you an example. So he's dominating me in the fight. I'm in a closed guard. I can reach up and I can pull his head down and I can take a breath, just rest and think, contemplate, use my head. I can start to tie him up by putting my hooks in. I can grab both sides. I can push him away. I can extend him. And I have defensive opportunities here, right? Guillotine, arm bars, the Kimura, so forth and so on. There's a lot of opportunities to defend myself from this position. So for me, if I'm the weaker opponent, this is my first strategy if I can't maintain it. Now bear in mind, if I get into a mounted position in my size with somebody who's much stronger, more capable than I am, I'm not going to stay in the mount very long, okay? That's just how it is. It's not a big deal. Doesn't mean I suck as a fighter. It just is reality, okay? Not a problem. I'm happy with that. But if I can't keep the mount, I sure as heck don't want him to end up in side mount on me. I don't want him to end up in knee on chest. I don't want him to end up in a back mount. So I'm looking to try to get myself into a position where I can be effective. And this tends to be a very neutral position at first. This allows me, again, to rest, to contemplate, to strategize, to think, to use my head. I don't want to be here. This is arguable, of course. You can be in a half guard and still be very, very effective. But I know strikers who, from the half guard, if they're in your half guard, can strike the crap out of you. Okay, so we don't want to risk that. This is our first strategy. Now, if for some reason I'm in the unfortunate position of being in a turtle, right? I'm tucking my elbows in, I'm tucking my head against my chest, I'm trying to protect my neck. I'm basically looking to minimize the amount of damage that's going to happen to me right off the bat. I'm not hanging my arms out for arm bars, you know what I mean? I'm not giving him my head up so that he can put me into a restraint or a choke, as people call it. What I'm looking to do is to sink in everything really tight and keep myself protected. If you go watch the UFC or watch Pride or watch any of those competitions that you see on the television these days, you'll see people go into the turtle. It happens all the time with very, very talented fighters. You've got two people who are extremely good at what they do, and yet one of them's in the turtle while the other one's trying to get back, or they're sliding around to a side, push for a side control or whatever. So the turtle is very logical. Why? Because there's not a lot to get to. So think of it like that. Why do you think they call it the turtle? Because it looks like a turtle, right? It might seem obvious, but they call it a turtle because if you look at a real turtle shell doesn't have a lot of openings, does it? It's got sort of openings where the legs are. It's got sort of openings where the other legs are. It's got a little opening where the tail is. It's got an opening where the head is. And what does a turtle do when it gets afraid or is trying to protect itself? Pulls everything into the shell, man. Pulls its legs, front and back legs in. It pulls its tail in. It retracts its head, and it gets down nice and tight and protects itself. So it's in that shell. So that's what that is, right? This is a shelled position. Gives me an opportunity to protect myself. And I would rather be in the turtle than have him getting a restraint on my neck, a choke, or have him getting full back mount or something like that. You can't get full back mount if you're in the turtle. You just don't get it that easily. You have to work for it. It isn't an automatic, right? He can't just sink his hooks in. He can't just automatically put his arm around my neck because, think about it. Here, go ahead and get in the turtle. Really bring yourself in nice and tight, okay? So if he's in nice and tight and he's protecting himself, and I can't punch him, right? If it's a competition, I can't kick him. Now on the street, that's different, right? On the street, I can back off here and just start wailing on him. Okay, they're not going to allow that in competition. So you have to think about it from that standpoint too, as part of your overall defensive strategy against a grappler, provided there aren't 6 guys surrounding you. This is okay, again, transitory in nature, right? I already said that. You're not staying here. But in this position, I can kick him and cause him some damage. Protect your head. So here, not as much, right? If he's protecting himself, I don't have a lot to do with his feet. I can't get his legs. I don't have his arms. I can't just grab this and go into an arm bar. I can't sink my arm around his neck, all right? He's pretty well protected for the moment. For the moment, right? You're not going to stay in this position. So again, a basic overall strategy is to transition yourself into a position of dominance, and where you can't do that, positions where you can survive. No matter what, I don't know if I said this in the other video, but I will say this in videos as you're learning the ground. If you're on the bottom, you're the one losing. And that's just the reality of it, okay? If you're the one on the bottom, it bears repeating, you're the one losing. So the goal is not to be on the bottom. Again, the goal is to be in a position where you're dominant, whether that's in a top mount or knee on chest or a side control. Those tend to be the dominant positions. Back mount is dominant position. And guard is more neutral. And then, of course, turtle is sort of quasi-neutral if you're only transitioning out of it, into it, and then back out of it again. And so as he starts to reach for you and he's grabbing your leg, or he's trying to go for your neck, or he sinks an arm in to try to get you, you've now got an arm, right? So once you've got an arm, you can now transition out. You can sit out, you can rotate into it, that kind of thing, to be able to open up new positions that can allow you to either juxtapose and get into the guard, or rotate and get into the guard, or who knows, rotate and sweep and get into the mount. If you know your sweeps and you know your transitions, you'll be good to go. You want to know at least 2 defensive moves. I always tell people this: 2 defensive moves for every position, 2 sweeps for every position, or transitions, and you'll be pretty good. That doesn't mean you're going to win every single fight you're in. It doesn't mean you're going to win every battle when you're on the mat. What it really boils down to is it just gives you a decent toolbox, right? If you're a boxer, you want to know your basic punches: jab, cross, hooks, uppercuts, right? It's the way you want to do it. So when you're talking about your basic defensive strategy, move yourself into those more functional positions that will protect you. And this is specifically defensive. We'll get into offensive and other things in other videos, but this is how we're going to approach it, or how we recommend you approach it. If you're getting dominated, try to get in the guard, or try to get into a turtle so you can transition into guard or another position. It's that simple.